is the Time Machine with Andrew Green. I, of course, am he. If this is your very first time checking out this podcast, thank you so much for giving this a chance. If you are a returning listener, welcome back. Thank you for all the support and love that you guys have shown me over a year of doing this podcast. It is growing each and every episode. I'm getting more and more downloads, so just continue to subscribe, continue to download episodes, and I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Because if you keep supporting me, I will keep on putting out special and awesome episodes like this one that I have for you today. Now, this episode has been in the works for about 7 months. If you have listened to this podcast before, you know that Paramore is one of my favorite bands of all time. And today, I had the honor of talking to the very first guitarist of Paramore, Jason Bynum. Now, Jason was in the band only for a brief time, but he was around when the band put out their first album in 2005, All We Know Is Falling. Now, in this episode, we talk all about the early days of Paramore. Jason tells me the stories of how he met Hayley Williams. He tells me what that first jam session was like, where the name came from, writing that first album, and playing their very first shows. Jason tells me how the band was treated differently by promoters back then, and he tells me what it was like when the band started creating a buzz, and ultimately why he left the band in 2005 and hasn't returned since. Now, if you're a Paramore fan, you will absolutely love this episode. If you love music, you will love this episode. Before I get into it, a few shout-outs. Shout out to my friend Lucio Vasquez. He helped film that commercial you can go check out at TTMWAG.com. He helped me film a documentary that I'm going to put out shortly about how COVID has affected the world of sports. Go check out his website, LucioVasquezVideo.com. He has some, if you have an idea you want to see come to life, if you want a commercial made, anything made for you, go check out LucioVasquezVideo.com, spelled LucioVasquez video.com, patreon.com/TTMWAG. If you want to help support this podcast, then TTMWAG.com, just for more awesome things about this show. Hey man, this very special awesome episode starts right now. So I've been a giant Paramore fan for about 4 years, and I'm a fairly new Paramore fan, you know, because they put out their last album in 2017. But like I said, I'm a big fan, so I've gone through all the Paramore albums, and like I said, it's a huge deal for me to be talking to. I guess, would you consider yourself? Are you the second guitar player for Paramore ever?
No, I was the first guitar player.
You were the first guitar player.
Yeah, so like, me and Josh and Hayley and Zach,
right?
We all started playing at the same time. Like we were the band. When we became Paramore, we became that band because we decided on a name. So I was the first guitar player for Paramore.
So obviously you grew up in the Franklin area.
Yeah, still live here.
Oh, really cool. So who did you know first out of the Paramore group? Was it the Farrell brothers, or was it Hayley, or who was it that you started jamming with first?
It's like the way that I met Hayley is through the slightly unknown best member of Paramore, Hayley's grandmother. I met Hayley's grandmother because I lived next door. Called her Granny, and she's that's just Granny. She's incredible. One of the kindest, sweetest women you will ever meet in your entire life. She's like, I need you to meet my granddaughter. Like, okay, cool, let's do it. We went to a Mexican restaurant, and I literally I got in her car, and I went and met Hayley. I had played music. I had toured for, give or take 3 or 4 years before I met Hayley.
Mm-hmm.
I was 20, I think, at the time when I met Hayley, and she was 15.
Wow.
And so she was talking about wanting to start doing some stuff. She had a band, and I had just gotten let go from the artist that I've been playing for. And she was like, do you want to come play rhythm guitar for us? And I was like, sure. I mean, why not? So she had been playing with Jeremy in a past band, doing like a jazz band thing forever ago. And then she had known Josh and Zach forever. And they kind of had all just started playing together. And they asked me to come and play rhythm guitar. So I did. And that's kind of how it all started. It was literally like just hanging out with Hayley and her grandma.
I want to go back to that. So
it was because I was a musician. They
Gotcha.
saw me coming in and out from the vans and the Winnebago that we toured in and stuff like that. So they knew that I was a musician because had good guitars and gear coming in and out all the time. So it was just kind of one of those things where I would say hi to them. I would mow her dad's lawn. Like, I knew her dad, but I didn't know she did music. So when her granny was like, you need to meet my granddaughter because I think you'd be great to play some music with her. And so that's kind of how it worked out.
What was that first jam session like with all of y'all? Well, I guess it was in a garage y'all were playing in?
It was actually Josh and Zach's bedroom.
Oh, wow. Man, it is a tight quarters probably.
Oh, yeah. It was awesome. It felt so good. And it's just weird. Sometimes with music, I've played with a lot of different artists and I've played all over the world. And sometimes you click with people and other times you don't. And this was one of those instances that it was right. It was perfect. And it felt like we were onto something. That's kind of what we all felt, is that we were onto something. And so we just tried really hard to figure that something out.
So, well, what year would you say this is?
That was,
So,
I want to say 2003.
2003. So when y'all got together for the first time, did y'all already have originals that y'all were working on, or was there a song that y'all kind of practiced before I went in?
We were working on some demos that Hayley had done of her own stuff. Hayley's been singing her whole life.
Right.
She songs. So we kind of worked up one of the songs and worked on some demo stuff for her in hopes that it would all work out and we would write a record and we would become a band. You know, Nashville's a very funny place when it comes to playing music because you just never really know if it's going to be the right thing or if it's going to be the right fit for you. So you kind of just like, you end up jamming with a lot of people, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, like I said before. So it was really just us kind of going through some demo stuff and like, whoa, this feels good. Let's write some music. So that's kind of what we did.
So I know that around that time, it was like Hayley apparently was talking with some executives from Atlantic Records. Was this after y'all started jamming, or this was before that you met Hayley when she had the meetings with the record executives?
I don't quite know the stories that you're referencing, to be honest. Because I only know my version of it. We went to California and we played a showcase for every major record label in the business at the Viper Room.
Oh, how would y'all get those connections at that time?
Hayley was in contact with a guy here in town who was kind of helping her find those contacts. Mm-hmm. And that guy was kind of helping us, like, just figure it out, you know?
Right.
So we showcase out there, and we had interest from lots of different companies, but it worked out the best. It worked out the best for going with Fuel by Ramen, and then later into Atlantic.
Right. So after shortly y'all got together and started jamming, how shortly after that was it when you guys started playing your first show?
Our first show. It was a good bit. We played, I think it was it a Halloween show? I'm trying to remember the first show. Mm-hmm. I'm having a hard time because I want to say that our first real show was with Copeland at the end. I'm pretty sure that was the first real deal show. We like opened for a band with some of the demo stuff called Roper, which is some of the guys from Five Iron Frenzy. I don't know if you know who that band is.
I don't know.
The Five Iron Frenzy, back when I was a young one, was a ska punk band, like a faith-based, like Christian ska punk band.
Right.
And so some of those guys went off and made this band called Roper. And so I think we played like 2 or 3 songs, something stupid, at this club here in Franklin.
So what were those first shows like? Because I see early recordings of Hayley. She looks kind of like she's kind of awkward at it. You know, you can tell she's not fully confident on the stage yet. You're just rocking out. I love watching those old clips because you're off to the side, and everyone has those emo bangs, and it's awesome. But what do you remember those very first shows being like?
One of the hardest things in music in general is really just nailing your live show. And that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are in doing that. Like, you even see the Justin Timberlakes of the world doing all these huge rehearsals for getting all the steps right and getting all the things right. When you're a punk band and you're coming up grassroots, touring in a van and trailer in these clubs that hardly have functioning steps, you got to figure it out. And so some days certain things work in one place and then other things don't work in another place. I think the hardest thing for us is to learn how to rock out and still play good music. That's one of the hardest things in figuring out that type of movement, is being able to keep it really, really, really clean. But we worked really, really, really hard.
So an album from Paramore that people usually overlook is the first album, because after that's when you had Riot and Brand New Eyes and so on and so forth, the other two. But All We Know is such, I mean, that has some heavy elements to that. My Heart is a great song on there, because I think it's the only Paramore song on a full-length album with screaming and the double pedals. It's like, why didn't other like early Paramore songs have screaming in them? And whose idea was it to put some screaming in My Heart?
That was Josh's. That was Josh's baby. There, it was like we were real big fans of Under Oath, and we knew those guys pretty well, and we really wanted to kind of like do a little bit of an homage. But it also, like, it was a hard time, man. That particular song we wrote in the studio, or in our practice space in Orlando, Florida. So we moved the whole band down to Orlando to cut our record, because we wanted to cut it with James Wisner, who was the mastermind behind They're Only Chasing Safety. So he was the guy that recorded all of that record for Under Oath. That was just so epic, and we really wanted to record with him. So that's who we went with. And that song we wrote in the studio, and I think, if I remember correctly, it was either the day or the day after we found out that Jeremy did no longer want to be in the band. So it was very emotional, and it was very tough for all of us, because we were about to cut our first record and he wanted to go home. And I get it. It's hard, man. Right. Touring, being away from family, and being away from everything that you know and love sucks. It's hard. But there's a certain amount of payoff that you get for it too. You get to do something that you love, something that most people would covet. But it's definitely not easy. And for anybody who's ever done it, they would all tell you the same thing.
So you just talked about it being hard when Jeremy left. Was it right before y'all started recording the album, or it was during when he left?
Or we started recording the album.
So overall, even though there's like that tough situation right there, what are some of your favorite memories when you were recording that?
Some of my favorite memories are that I think we all got sick in the studio. Like, we were just so spent. Like, we were getting up at 6 o'clock every morning and running 3 miles, and then rehearsing for 8 to 10 hours a day. And then me and Hayley and Josh would do a vocal rehearsal at night right before dinner came out, because her mom was helping make dinner and stuff. And so it was just a lot. But I think some of our favorite moments were in that recording session we were all trying to hit all these notes that some of us could kind of come close and others didn't. And you just end up, it's the rawness of being in the studio for the first time and being there with people that you love, with songs that you've spent hours cultivating and trying to figure out what's the right ones for the record and what are the right ones that we've written and that we've been playing that don't go on the record. Because there were songs that didn't make it. There were songs that we loved that just weren't right for that particular record. So you're telling me that there's songs from that record that haven't been released and they're stored away somewhere in a studio in Florida? In my house.
Really?
Like, well, I've got copies of them at least. Like, I mean, I've got all kinds of copies of songs that we've played and that we've recorded. And some of them are out there. They're on the internet. Like there was one that I wrote with Hayley and Josh that's called, I think it's called Until Tomorrow now. I think they changed the name of it, but it was called Breathe when we wrote it. We wrote that in, you know, the band Hot Shell Ray. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
They had a pop song on the radio. We were using their studio to do some recording stuff, and we wrote that, and it's a piano-based song.
Oh, very cool. So you're saying the original version was piano-based, or the version that you guys covered also has piano in it too?
No. The song that we wrote is a piano-based song.
Oh, got you. It's not... Okay, I was thinking, because there was a cover that y'all did do. I forgot what band it was. It was from a 90s band that you may have been out at the time, but...
Probably. I mean, I kept up. I kept up with them, but I probably was out of the band at the time.
Right.
More than like...
But I can't think what the song is. But, so what's interesting, you talked about helping write... I mean, everyone... It was basically a group effort when y'all were writing these songs, right?
To a certain extent. I mean, when you get down to technics, Hayley wrote 90% of the lyrics to everything. She is an incredible, amazing, intellectual writer. Like, just, I still have some of the very first notebooks we ever wrote any songs on in my office over there. And it's just incredible the way that she's a wordsmith. Like, it's the only way I can put it. Like, she really has a way with words and has a way with pulling emotion out of words. It's really cool. Excuse me. But and then Josh was the primary melody writer for a lot of the stuff. I'm 90% of everything that they did, as far as I know, until Taylor came into the band, which we've been friends with Taylor since it started. So he's as much of a member as he could possibly ever be. So love that guy.
Well, what was the deal with Taylor not being in the band at the very beginning? I'm
not too sure. I don't quite know why that never really ended up the way that it ended up. And I think the way that I see it, it's probably just the way it was supposed to be. Because even his brother was playing auxiliary, Justin York,
right,
was playing auxiliary for them. And I've known Justin in other bands that I've worked with and played for from before even meeting Taylor. So it's funny, kind of a cool come around. I don't know. I think he was the right person to take my place. He was the perfect person to take my place. He had a vested interest in the band and its success. He's an incredible guitar player, and he is the most humble, down-to-earth person that I've met probably in the whole music industry. Love that guy.
So at this time, you mentioned you were 20 and Hayley was 15 and everyone else was. Were you the oldest in the band?
Yeah.
So were you the only one that wasn't in high school when all this was going on?
Yeah.
So what was it like when your band members had to go do some homeschooling?
Oh, dude. Hayley homeschooled every day. We would pick Zach up from Franklin High School and drive him to rehearsal. Like, I had a big wood panel station wagon, like the one from Vacation, the Chevy Chase, right? It was just like that. We fit the whole stage full of instruments and 6 people in there. And that's basically like our first show vehicle. So I would just drive everybody around, and it was fun, man. It's cool. I didn't really get into, I'd never really got into anything bad when I was younger. I turned 21 on the road, didn't even have a drink when I was 21. Like, it was just innocent. It was fun. It wasn't contrived. We weren't trying too hard. We were just trying to go out there and make music and have fun. That's all we were trying to do. So
overall, though, were you the person of the band that people looked up to since you were the oldest? And you're like, come on, guys, we know better than this. Were you kind of or did you kind of just mind your business for the most part?
I mean, you always try to mind your business, but at a certain point, I had been the only one that had toured. I think Jeremy might have toured, but I toured pretty extensively before working with them. And just that knowledge alone is kind of imperative to survival. So sometimes there was a little bit of that feeling. It wasn't me trying to be that person at all. I just wanted to be able to play music. That's all I wanted to do.
Right.
But some of the responsibility did fall on my shoulders. I did a lot of the merchandise managing. I helped our tour manager do stuff. I was also one of the primary drivers. So me and Hayley's dad were the only two ones on the insurance to drive. So I would drive the band. So, we've got tons of stories. We hit a deer once on the road. We had a rock fly through one of the back windows and almost hit Hayley on the highway. She was writing in her journal, like writing a song in the back seat, and almost got hit by a rock that bounced off the highway. Yeah. Gnarly.
Nuts, dude. I will go back to All We Know real quick because I do want to talk about more touring and stuff. But how come you're not credited in the album? Like, I have the vinyl right here. Like I said, I have all the albums on vinyl. Big fan. And how come your picture isn't on the sleeve and your name isn't credited?
Man, I wish I could tell you. It was a sad day when I found that out. I don't know. I have no idea why. I know that that's a re-release, and
okay.
I think that with the re-release, they don't have to. They can change it all up if they want to, because the statute of limitations. They don't have to. They are not obligated to put people on things. I don't think. I'm not 100% sure. I can't really speak to it. I would love to know, because I don't know why that wasn't a thing, but.
Because I literally just found this out to myself because I was just looking at the album and I was just looking at your name. Hey, I'm about to talk to this guy. I'm like, wait, his name isn't on the back here. And so, is that how you felt?
I actually, a fan contacted me and was like, dude, they took you off. I was like, what? Because I don't talk to a whole lot of fans, just because I kind of screwed up when I was younger. I didn't really play into the social media thing, which I should have. It was like Twitter came out when we were on the road and I didn't tweet, but Hayley did. And now I don't have millions of followers on Twitter. But yeah, somebody told me about it and I was like, man, it's unfortunate. I still would love to be a part of that legacy if that's their choice. Maybe they just had a rebranding and they wanted to do it differently to try to, I don't know. It would all be speculation if I tried to answer the question.
Right, sure. But how did the other members react to that? I mean, I imagine it wasn't their decision, obviously. It was probably some executive somewhere. Like I said, we're just speculating, but the music business can be like this sometime. But was everyone else kind of bummed out too?
I don't know. I didn't really talk to anybody about it. I've actually never approached that conversation with anyone.
Wow.
Yeah. I just kind of let it go. Life's too short.
Sure, exactly. But now this album, I love. Obviously, the title track is probably my favorite song on the album. I know that Pressure is the biggest one off of here. What's your favorite song off the record?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember them all. So,
want me to read them off to you off the back of the vinyl?
What's number 4?
Brighter.
No.
Want me to read them?
Hold on 1 second. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. All We Know, Pressure, Emergency, Brighter.
That was my favorite one.
Emergency.
Yeah.
And that's a good one.
All We Know was fun. We shot that I think the guy's name was Dan Doby. We shot a little video here in Franklin and in our rehearsal space with him. Man, Josh did his guitar throw once. It hit me in the back of the head and like busted my head open.
Right.
Crazy.
So after this album came out, that's when, I mean, you guys started playing Warped Tour not long after that, touring the country with this whole thing. I know that Hayley has recently said in interviews how she was treated when she was younger, being a female in a band. Did you notice that the band was treated differently any because of Hayley?
Oh, totally. I mean, it's a hard road out there, especially on Warped Tour. Unfortunately, not a lot of people have the wonderful disposition to be able to tour with females in their band. I think almost every band I've ever played for has had a girl in it, at one point in time or another. I almost prefer it that way because it seems to level the playing field and dudes don't really get out of hand. Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be treated differently because you're young too. So that first year, Zach was 13 years old.
Only 13?
Yeah, Hayley was 15, Josh was 16, Jeremy was 18, and I was 21. I turned 21 that year. I mean, I guess we all had a birthday that year. So it would be right around those ages, 13, 14, 16, 17. Like, we were all kids. So there definitely was some just frustrations and mistreatment just for being young. And then Hayley handled it like a champ, but did get treated differently from other people. And, that's why we were there, though. I mean, she's like my little sister. I've always thought that of her. We always protected her. We always walked her out to the car, wanted to make sure she was safe, but it's definitely not, at least at that time, it wasn't really a world that was very kind to to female musicians. And it's unfortunate that it had to be that way, or that it is that way, or was that way.
Right.
But we tried as hard as possible to not let anything get to us, because part of figuring out how to be a great band is having to roll with the punches.
Right.
So, and that girl's stronger than anybody I know. Like, she's run the gauntlet. And I've heard so many different like rumors and things about her being not a nice person. And people have asked me to speak to that. She's the nicest person ever. She always has been. Always has been. And as far as I'm concerned, always will be one of the nicest, kindest people. I mean, she opened up her band to me and, her house to invite somebody that was just a neighbor in, She didn't have to do that. She was my connection to being in that band anyway. So I feel that she definitely was knocked a little bit for being a girl out in that environment. But at the same time, we had a lot of really strong dudes that sticking up for her. So we tried to stick up for as much as possible.
When do you remember the first time that Hayley dyed her hair?
She had always dyed her hair because her natural color is closer to blonde, I think. And so she had red hair when I met her.
Okay. Always that way.
It was subdued. It wasn't the bright red. Like she started doing more major color stuff after I got out of the band, I think.
Yeah. So when all of y'all are, like I said, brother and sister, all of you 13 through 21, traveling in a Christmas vacation station wagon, as you called it, what kind of things do y'all fight about as a band when you're that young?
Man, you fight about stupid stuff. It's almost menial and not worth repeating, because it's like you go to McDonald's for lunch and that's kids fight and argue about stupid things. Now there was some there's hard conversations that you have to have, especially when it comes to picking a name. It's one of our hardest things. We played shows under different names because we were trying to figure out what we wanted to be and who we wanted to be. So like once we finally settled on Paramore, that was kind of our biggest argument, was just like, what do we want to be called? Because nobody could decide. But you're also having to decide a name, a website, all these legacy things that if something happened and you did well, you didn't want to have to pay a bunch of money to get google.com if your band name was Google. You know what I mean? So thinking about those things really set us up for success.
Oh, what were some of the band names that y'all worked under before y'all decided on Paramore?
We had, I mean, the very first one that we kind of like blurted out, it wasn't intentional, I don't think at all. I think it was Astrofell. Means like fallen angel or something like that. It just didn't really ring after we thought about it long enough. And then we played a show as Drop Dead Gorgeous before that band ever came around. But I had an old metal band with my brother, and we had used that name and we stopped using it. And then so we were like, well, I'll ask the guys. And so I had to like get written permission to use it for this show. And then by the time we played the show, we were already Paramore. So
now I haven't heard it come out of the horse's mouth where the name came from. I see it like it was somebody's stepmom's name on Wikipedia, something like that. Where exactly did that name originate from?
One of Josh's friends, like mother's maiden name or something like that, or stepmother's maiden name. I don't know. It just ended up being a name that was brought to us. I don't actually remember like when it happened or why. It's a little foggy for me. Like I said, it's been a long time, but yeah. And we were just kind of like, it has a good ring to it. I think at that point too, we were kind of we were over it. It's a lot. It's trying to figure it out for a long time. And if it worked and we could find all the websites and we could find that it was, going to be a name that we could stick with. The hardest part is if you have to change a name as a band, you don't want to have to do that, So yeah, it was one of Josh's friends' mother's maiden name, as far as I know.
At the time, did you think it was a good name?
I was kind of so. I'm a big fan of simple. Just because, like I said, I've played music for a long time. The songs that you like the most, that appeal to the most people, generally end up being simpler in so many words. They usually have a great melody and a good arc, but they're easy to comprehend. So when it comes to names and things like that, simple is better. Easy to spell, easy to, say, roll off the tongue. Aerosmith, right? Aerosmith.
Right.
Easy, So that was kind of my thing, is I was like, it's a little complicated, but I think it'll work. So it worked.
And it still works. It's a very unique name. It honestly is. Like, who else has thought of the name Paramore? Well, besides Josh's friends, stepmoms, whoever made a name, probably no one.
Yeah.
So I mentioned talking about Josh screaming in the last part of My Heart, and then I know in some of the earliest clips for some of y'all shows, Josh would scream even longer throughout the song. And I thought his screaming and Hayley's voice, and then even your backups, they all blended so well. But did y'all think about, did y'all want this band to be a screamo band in the beginning? Did y'all thought about adding more screaming?
No, we didn't at all. It was one of those things we tried, and Josh was really good at it, and it worked for that song, but we came to the realization that it probably would have killed our potential success for anything bigger than a small-time touring band. Like, you don't really have a whole lot of big screamo bands. It just doesn't really work because it doesn't appeal to as many people, and it doesn't really we just wanted to do a little bit more than that, I guess.
Now that's really fascinating, because I'm really curious to what Paramore would sound like today if they continued to scream, and what songs would have had screaming in them if they continued to scream. Now, Jason, I want to know what it was like when Paramore started to create a bigger buzz, and what it was like drawing in those bigger crowds and playing on those bigger stages. I also want to know why you left Paramore and what you have been doing since 2005. Now, before we get into that, let's take a quick break following these messages. So after All We Know came out, and like I said, we already talked about y'all going on a Warped Tour, and then one of my favorite clips ever, it's on YouTube. Y'all are playing at this studio for TV. It's called like Fearless Music. I don't know if you remember this, but you have like an Apple sticker on your guitar and everything like that. Y'all are getting somewhat attention, but what do you remember being the biggest break for the band at the time?
The biggest break for the band at the time was during that trip when we played Fearless Music. Fearless Music was one of the things that had been set up for us that ended up being a really awesome thing for us. We walked all of our gear from our friend's apartment to the studio. So we're walking through New York City, through Times Square with all of our gear, all our guitars and everything. And we got in the studio and did that. But the most memorable moment was when we played the Nokia Arena in Times Square with Simple Plan, and we were interviewed by MTV.
Wow.
So there's a Paramore MTV You Hear It First. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that video on YouTube?
Maybe I have. I've seen a lot of Paramore videos, and so
said I was fancy, and they like stars around me.
Right.
But yeah, that was probably our biggest break, was being on MTV when MTV was still a thing. That was right before MTV turned into all reality show. So
after this, what was the attention like y'all were getting from people when y'all were? Did you notice crowds getting bigger around that time, or?
It was insane. It happened from the very first show we ever played. We put our minds to it. We played the best shows that we could possibly play. And every single time the crowd got exponentially bigger and bigger. We would play shows when we first started, and the whole crowd would leave after we were done. Yeah, that happened like a couple times.
Do you remember what bands that y'all were opening up for at the time?
There was a band here in town, specifically the one I remember the most. We were at Rocket Town, which is a big venue. And that's actually where we shot the All We Know video, the live footage of the All We Know video. And there was a band called Lenny. They were a local band that had booked the room, the big room. And there was a couple hundred people there. And then after we played, everybody left. And we started seeing that more and more, where we were becoming a big deal. We had people that would bring us gifts and bake us cakes and cookies, and like we had a cake with our face on it, like our picture on it of us, like our first year touring. It was crazy. Like we had people waiting when we'd get out of the van, like in the line. They want to get autographs and stuff. It was unbelievable, man. Like it progressed so fast.
So I guess a majority of your fan base was probably around the teen to young adult, or did you see a mix of people early that on?
We saw a mix of people, but I mean, generally the music was angsty, and it was that I don't know what to do with myself, so this is what I'm doing. I'm putting out these songs, and we're going to show people, what we're made of. And that spoke to people. And our biggest thing was the fans come first. The fans are the only reason why we're still on the road and still being able to do this, is because these people come out to every single one of our shows. So we would spend hours with our fans, hanging out with them, doing time with them, because that's really what it's about. It's not about you. It's not about you being famous. It's about you're providing something. It's a service industry position. You're providing a service, and people are buying your music, but you need to give that back to them. Like you're a part of their lives now. So we really focused on making sure that people that loved us, we wanted to be there for them. And we wanted to, like, I even had a guy recently come to my bar. I was working as a bartender, and we were talking, and he sat at my bar for an hour or two. He was like, "You look really familiar." And I told him what my name was, and he started hyperventilating.
Really?
He would not really. He was just like, "Oh my God. Oh my God." I was like, "Dude, it's cool. It's cool." So I brought him an old original poster and a sticker and like signed it all for him and stuff. He was the coolest guy, the nicest dude. And I had to pull into like old trunks to find the stuff, because it's just stuff that I had from Warped Tour back in the day. And he was so happy. And I just loved that part about Paramore, being able to provide, that community for them. Because it was a place that the nobodies could go, the people that wanted to just feel it out and listen to music. That was the place where you could just be yourself. Like those punk rock shows back in the beginning are unlike anything else, man. Like you'd go there, you'd make friends. Everyone was generally sober because it was younger things. So it was all about listening to music, having fun, and getting to meet new people.
Definitely. So
it was fun to create that environment is all I was going to say.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I was going to ask you now, it sucks that COVID has come into this world and like now live shows have kind of become a thing of the past. But do you ever think that there's going to be another band like Paramore in the sense of starting out when a majority of them are in high school?
I think there could be, but it's going to take a very, very specific group of people to do that. I think the hardest part nowadays is that people think, I'll put it into a little bit more perspective. With social media and with the internet being a much bigger and broader thing, when we were touring, we all still had flip phones. So we didn't really have that connection to everybody and everything. The hardest thing about being a band like that is it takes a lot of work. And a lot of people are more used to, going on YouTube and making a video and then they're famous that way, or they're, making their art that way, or they're providing a service that way, or Instagram or whatever. And it's not the same type of work ethic anymore. It's like the whole world has changed in how you get from A to B. We had to work really, really hard to get to where we were.
So do you think Paramore, if they started off today, do you think, or if y'all started off today being like kids here in 2020, do y'all think y'all would be do you think Paramore would be as big as it is right now, let's say, 15 years later?
I have it's just a personal belief that everything happens in its right time for a reason. Because like when you start to pull the universe together and see how we're all connected, like certain points of times in your life where you've been impacted by that music wouldn't exist if that band started today. But it only existed because we worked hard 15 years ago. So the people and the strings of that constellation that is now out there, the millions of people that band has reached, I don't think that there's ever going to be anything like any band anymore. There's not going to be another Aerosmith because they wove a specific web that touched people and pulled them into a world that doesn't exist anywhere else. So I mention Aerosmith a lot because it's my wife's favorite band. So
yeah, I was about to say I'm picking up a certain theme along this. Just random question. Did you ever get to meet Steven Tyler?
No, but my wife has. My wife was on American Idol for a couple seasons.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah.
What's your wife's name?
Her name when she was doing that is Stephanie Schimmel. She went through all the first rounds of American Idol, got to meet Steven Tyler and all that stuff, and got to go to California and Hollywood Week and those things. She never made it to the like big show part, but she did a lot of work on it. She's a phenomenal singer. So.
No way. So how did you two meet?
So we met in 2011. I had stopped playing. I had stopped touring as a musician. I got hit by the flood in 2010, and I lost most everything that I owned, like $170,000 worth of stuff.
Wow!
So I couldn't play music anymore. I just didn't have any more gear. My pedal board, everything was toast. So I was touring as a merchandise manager for a Christian artist. Nashville has a really big Christian touring scene, and they only tour like a couple days out of the week most of the time. So it's like the perfect thing. You can go out for a couple days, make some money, and come home. So I met her on the last day of tour in Waukesha, Wisconsin. The band I was working for played her church, and my life was never the same after the day I met her.
Wow. So I want to touch on this because I know that everyone had a pretty strong belief, obviously Paramore started.
Yeah.
At this time in your life, are you still, were you raised in the church?
I was, yeah.
At this time when you're 21, because I was raised in the church myself, around this time, that's when I started thinking, okay, I need to start searching things on my own. So the Christian, searching out more of the Christian belief, not relying on my parents that much. Yeah, I'm sure you know where I'm coming from, trying to separate yourself from your parents' beliefs or find answers for yourself. When you're touring, though, did you find it difficult to interact with other Christians on the road?
I grew up in the church, and I grew up in lots of churches. And being on the road is kind of like what I could describe in like today's world as being on the mission field. And it's not that I would ever try to persuade anybody in any direction to anything. But if anybody ever wants to hear my story, I'm an open book. That's kind of the way I've always said it. And I feel that if you take any prejudices out of the way that normally exist in those realms, I mean, Christianity has gotten a pretty bad rap lately, man. Yeah. And if you take those prejudices out of the way and try to just love people, that's really what my stance has been my whole life. I don't care where you come from. I don't care what's going on in your life. I just want to be here to love you. That's what I've always thought. And that's not a Christian belief. That's just what I believe. And I believe that anybody that is a Christian should believe that way.
100%.
And I don't know. It's always worked for me, man. Just love on people and try to be the best representation of Christ that you could possibly be. And, sometimes that doesn't always sit well with people because I don't really talk a lot about being a Christian. I still am. But I don't talk about it. Mostly because it generally takes you out of the ball game from being able to play. You know what I mean? Like people just automatically assume things about you. I don't know. I've never really hid it. I don't hide it, but I don't really talk about it because I feel like my specific belief is a little bit different than what most people believe. So I just try to love on people. Like I said, I don't care where you come from. I don't care what's going on in your life. I've got friends that are so incredible that I never would have thought that I would ever be friends with them. And they're so incredible. They're not believers. They're not Christians. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care where you are, what you come from, what you're doing. As long as you're a nice person and you care about people, I'm going to do the exact same. I want to care about people. I want to just love on people. So that's me. I don't know if that answers your question or not. I might have gotten off on a tangent. I haven't really ever had to answer that question before. So
it's all good. But so I know that our time isn't too long. Yeah, there's so much I want to dive into because, like I said, you told me before we started that you haven't really done interviews. So what's some of your reasons, if you feel like sharing, for you not doing interviews in the past?
It's kind of a hard question, to be honest. Part of it is, I'll just say this. This is how I'm going to say it. This band has been incredible.
Right. Of course.
Incredible to be a part of. I'm so thankful to be a part of its legacy. That there is not a whole lot of benefit for me to do any kind of interview, because I don't have any vested interest in being famous anymore. I'm just a normal guy. I sell health insurance, man. That's what I do now. And I'm okay with that. It's such a beautiful part of my life to be seen as a part of this band and to do that I don't want to ever do anything that could potentially hurt them to continue doing what they're doing and the legacy that I started. So that's kind of the reasoning. I know there's a lot of people out there that have been trying to dig up dirt, on this, that, or the other. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that even came out recently that, like, things have said about past members of Paramore. My goal is just to make sure that no ill will is spread about the band that I started and created and helped cultivate with these beautiful, amazing people. Now, Hayley and Josh, I guess they don't talk anymore. I don't really know, because I don't talk to them either. But friends fall apart, things grow apart. It's hard, man. Life's hard. But thankfully, we still have this wonderful band that brings us all together. So I haven't really done a lot, because I feel like I didn't ever want to do them a disservice, if that makes any sense. So
yeah. So what year did you leave?
I left at the end of 2005, right before the holidays, I believe. That's when it was. I had just a lot going on in my life, and it's a really tough time for me to be away from my family. And I had an awesome girlfriend at the time that I kind of wanted to be around. And my dad really needed help, because my mom decided she wanted to move to Romania. So she left my family. And I have my older sister is handicapped. I had 2 younger siblings that my dad was raising, and he needed help. So part of it was just like, kind of want to go home. My dad needs some help. Maybe this is going to be it for now. I kind of always thought in the back of my head, maybe I could come back for like a reunion tour or something like that, which I would totally do. I would love that. But I don't know if that ship sailed or not. I don't quite know.
Dude, that would be awesome, man, if y'all did a reunion tour. Like, it's 15 years since All We Know. If they did 20-year All We Know reunion tour, you came out, you played some of the hits, that would be awesome. I would travel to go see that.
I just did I haven't even played, man, like, at all, hardly, in years. So since 2010, so it's been almost 10 years. I played one show. What was it, last year? I was asked to play a reunion for Warped Tour, the Warped Tour reunion show. Right. It's the 50th in Nashville. And so I played with Matt Thiessen from Reliant K. Yeah. One of the from I can't remember what his name is, from Yellow Card. Okay. Got to play with those guys. There were some awesome, like, celebrity people in there, and got to play a cool show. I haven't put any of the clips online. I'll have to put it online and let you see what you think.
That sounds awesome, man.
I played the old guitar and did the whole thing, like the guitar with the Apple sticker on it.
Yeah, legit.
It was fun, man.
So you just haven't played music just because you found other interest in life? Because I was kind of that way, where I would play guitar and then I would just find, I have other priorities in my life that I would tend to then play the guitar every now and then, not as passionate as I was. Was it kind of that same way with you?
So there's a lot to that question, to be honest. It was a little bit of that, but most of it was that I kind of did it. I went out there, I signed to a major label, we toured. I toured with tons of bands after that. I toured with bands on Disney Channel. I toured with all kinds of different people. And once I got hit by the flood, I just kind of saw it as like a sign. I was like, oh, well, guess I got to figure out what to do next. And people always asked me, like, one of the major questions when I was doing interviews with Paramore, when I was in the band, was, if you didn't do this, what would you like to do? And my answer was always, I'd love to be an actor. I think that would be incredible. I don't know if I have any skills to do it, and I think that would be completely out of reach, but I would love to do it. But over the last 10 years, I've created and cultivated a very significant acting career and done a lot of movies and TV shows and stuff like that. So
yeah, I've seen that. So what projects have you worked on?
So I've got a movie that's actually going into distribution right now called Why We Breathe. It should be out probably within the next year. I don't know the details on the distribution yet. And I did one a couple years ago. What was it called? It was called, I can't remember what it was called. It was a Christmas movie.
Okay.
And it was on like Amazon Prime or something like that recently. But it wasn't my best performance, I'll be honest. But I did a show for the ID Network. And it was called Homicide Hunter.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was season 9, episode 3 of Homicide Hunter. And it was like a little half episode thing. I played a guy from the 1800s that was a murderer. It was fun.
Oh, so was it based on a real guy?
Yeah, it was like a reenactment thing for like this guy that had confessed a murder on a piece of wood and then built his home out of it, and they were remodeling the home and pulled it off, and they find this thing and they're reading off like, I murdered this guy in cold blood. Like, it's like a real story that I did the reenactment for, but it was from the 1800s, so the long hair, and did the whole thing.
I imagine you with the handlebar mustache in like England.
It was literally this. Like, my hair's super long.
Yeah.
And my teeth were bright yellow.
Wow.
They did like gross teeth, and I was wearing a hat. Did this whole thing. It was fun.
That's awesome, dude. So acting has definitely been a big part of your life in these past 10 years. Yeah,
it just kind of it filled the void of not really doing music in the level that I wanted to do anymore, and not really being able to be out on tour because I didn't really want to be. Like, I've got an amazing wife and I've got a 6-month-old kid.
Yeah. I
want to be here as much as possible. So being able to be, at home is my priority now. So it's pretty nice. I can go and shoot something for a day or two, and then I don't have to do much else. So
yeah. A few questions before we wrap up here. What's your favorite Paramore song after All We Know? First of all, have you even listened to them that much?
Oh yeah. I always gave everything a good listen to, because like, I wanted to stay up on it if somebody ever had a question for me, or if I met somebody. I'm a really personal person, so like, I like to meet people in person. And when they, if somebody were to talk to me about it, I want to be able to hold a conversation. I think my favorite song of theirs was Crush.
Yeah.
I not only did I love the song, I loved the video. Shane Drake, man, that dude is so sick, and that video was incredible. It's like very Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and just really pulled the grittiness out of it. It was cool.
Right, and one of my favorite songs post All We Know is Careful, because the riffs on that, and like, people don't give Josh enough credit, I don't think, because you already talked about him, but that dude is a good guitar player. I mean, you are too, but the stuff that he's also come with on the albums, on Riot and Brand New Eyes, is just like, whoa.
Josh has a really unique way of hearing the song and really just pushing a melody through. he's always been that way. He's always been the guy to find that little, just those little things that kind of pull you and push you into the song. And I mean, that's why it worked. That's why it worked. You know, like Hayley and Josh, they worked together on everything, and they came up with all these really amazing bases for us to build upon. And that's always, you build a base, and then you bring players in, you build upon it, and you make it epic. That was the goal, just make it epic. So,
have you seen them live since you have been out of the band?
Oh yeah, a bunch of times. I went to Warped once and hung out with them. I've seen them a handful of times here or there. I wanted to go to the last show that they played in town, but I didn't end up being able to make it. But yeah, I mean, I've seen them play, and I still love every minute of it, man. Like, they're a very talented band. They always have been. They're very talented people in every respect. So, but for the most part, you talk about Hayley so well and Taylor so well. I mean, and you talk about wanting to go back and play. So, you know, from the sounds of it, you guys are in pretty much in a. I mean, I haven't really talked to Josh or Zach at all. I saw Zach at the lake once.
Oh wow!
I just said hey, but I mean, I would totally be down if they wanted to pull something together. I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, man, that'd be cool.
Now, I just want to ask as a fan, but is there anything like bad with Josh and Zach and you guys? Was there any like tension in between y'all?
No, I think any tension that would have been there was just an age gap.
Sure.
Because, you know, I mean, that was the hardest thing about touring in general, was just that it sucks. Touring's hard, man. Yeah. And it puts a lot of strain on relationships. I've always had great love for Josh and Zach, and they're incredible musicians and great people. You know, at the same time, you know, over time, people do change in certain ways. I know I've changed a ton since that. I was kind of a jerk back then. I know that was just because that was my young adolescent, like, thinking I'm cool, hot stuff. You know, I knew that I was a little bit of a pill to swallow. So, you know, I've come a long way, and I've really just tried to remain humble and just try to be, you know, the best person that I can be to help support the legacy that they created.
Absolutely. So what's next for you? You got you talked about the movie that was coming up. You mentioned you're a 6-month-old baby, which congratulations to you and your wife for that. That's awesome. But yeah, well, what's your next goal in life?
So for me, I got a couple things going, but some of them are more prevalent than others. I'm writing a book. Writing a book about my mother. So my mom had a pretty crazy story, and it's pretty epic, and I would hope to one day get it made into a movie. Wow. I'm writing a book with the help of my brothers to kind of share her story. That's a long process thing, not anytime soon. I do want to make some music with my wife at some point in time. Cool. So we just moved next door to my brother. We're going to be utilizing his studio because it's epic. I'll show you. So like, he's got full piano and drums and my cello. Dude, your cello? That's sick. So he's got a really cool setup here that we'll be able to actually play some music and, you know, write together. My wife and I wrote a Christmas song last year, but we never released it. But, you know, just to do that, I really want to, if I do music again, it's going to be because I want to and because I love it, and not for money or for fame or for anything else, than really for doing it for my son. Because that's the reason why I do it. It's because my dad's a great musician. I used to watch my parents play when I was a kid. So that's what I wanted to do, and I got to do it. So really just that. Like, I'll probably make some music here in the next couple of years. Still working on acting stuff. But right now I sell insurance with a company here in Nashville, and I get to work from home. I get to spend time with my wife and my kid, and I don't have to be in COVID world.
Right.
So, man, I'm just trying to figure out how to enjoy life, make money, and spend the least time working.
Right. Now there you have it. This was a very awesome experience talking with Jason Bynum, the very first guitar player from Paramore. I hope that all of you have learned something. I certainly learned a lot, and we even talked for a more 30 minutes after this podcast, just asking him about other things and just a whole bunch of other stuff surrounding him and Paramore. Jason, it was a pleasure to talk with you. You're such an awesome guy. Thank you for your time, and thank you all for listening. All of you are awesome. Remember to subscribe, leave a 5-star rating wherever you're listening to this podcast. You can find Jason Bynum on Twitter at Jason_Bynum. You can find me on the Instagram at green_go97. I'm also on the Twitter at Andrew P. Green and at TTMWAG. Patreon.com/TTMWAG if you want to help support this podcast. Thank you all once again for listening. Stay safe, God bless, be nice, and I will check you out later.